The Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences floated in the neutral zone between three major star systems, its crystalline spires catching the light of distant suns. For over 2 centuries, it had been the most prestigious educational institution in known space, where the brightest minds from hundreds of species came to study everything from quantum mechanics to interstellar diplomacy. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Council adjusted his ceremonial robes as he walked through the Academy's main corridor. The walls displayed holographic achievements of past graduates, scientists who had unlocked faster-than-light communication, diplomats who had prevented galactic wars, and engineers who had built the great space stations that now served as trading hubs across the galaxy. Today marked the beginning of a new academic cycle, and, with it came the arrival of the most diverse group of students the Academy had ever seen. "The human delegation has arrived," announced his aide, a young Altarian with violet skin and multiple sets of arms. "They're requesting permission to dock at Bay 7. Kethvar nodded thoughtfully. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Their inclusion in the Academy had been controversial. Many species considered them primitive, aggressive, and unpredictable. The Consortium of Peaceful Worlds had only agreed to admit human students after intense debate and numerous safety protocols. "How many in their delegation?" Kethvar asked as they walked toward the docking bay. 12 students and 3 supervisors, his aide replied, consulting a datapad. "Standard admission numbers. Nothing unusual in their academic records, though their species classification still carries a level 3 caution rating." The docking bay hummed with activity as ships from across the galaxy delivered new students. Kethvar watched as elegant Cerinthian vessels, shaped like flowing water, settled next to the geometric perfection of crystalline collective transports. Each species brought their own architectural aesthetics even to their spacecraft, creating a beautiful chaos of design philosophies. The human ship was different. It was angular, functional, with visible armor plating and what appeared to be defensive systems. Even their transport looked ready for combat, which only reinforced the stereotypes many species held about humanity. "Ambassador," a smooth voice called out. Kethvar turned to see Director Yilmoth approaching, her 6 insectoid legs clicking against the polished floor. As head of the Academy, she commanded respect from every species in the galaxy. Her compound eyes reflected the light as she spoke. "I trust you're prepared for the opening ceremony?" "Of course, Director. Though I must admit, I'm curious about our human students. Their psychological profiles make for interesting reading." "Indeed. Dr. Harriet Chen, their lead supervisor, has impressive credentials. Degrees in xenobiology, quantum physics, and interspecies communication. The students themselves scored remarkably high on our entrance examinations, particularly in practical problem-solving scenarios." As they spoke, the human ship completed its docking sequence. The airlock hissed open, and the human delegation emerged. Kethvar studied them with professional interest. They were smaller than most galactic species, averaging about 2 meters in height, with their distinctive bilateral symmetry and limited sensory organs. What struck him most was their alertness, their eyes constantly moving, cataloging their environment in a way that suggested either curiosity or paranoia. Dr. Chen stepped forward first, a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in alien environments. Behind her came the students, 12 young humans, their faces showing a mixture of excitement and nervousness that was almost endearing. "Director Yilmoth, Ambassador Kethvar," Dr. Chen said, offering the traditional Zephyrian greeting gesture she had clearly practiced. "Thank you for this opportunity. My students are honored to attend the most prestigious institution in the galaxy." Among the students, one caught Kethvar's attention. A young woman, perhaps 20 in human years, with dark hair and unusually bright eyes. While the other students were looking around in obvious wonder at the Academy's grandeur, she was studying the other species present with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. There was something in her posture, a stillness that reminded him of predators he had encountered on hunting expeditions. "Welcome to the Academy," Director Yilmoth replied. "I trust your journey was comfortable?" The neutral zone can be challenging to navigate for those unfamiliar with the gravitational anomalies. "Our pilot handled it well," Dr. Chen said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Humans adapt quickly to new challenges. The orientation ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall, a vast chamber that could accommodate thousands of beings from dozens of different atmospheric requirements. Environmental fields created pockets of suitable conditions for each species, the methane-breathing Zorkath in their containment suits, the crystalline Veltar in their high-energy radiation zones, and the aquatic Merdine in their mobile water tanks. Dean Vorgash, a massive bear-like creature from Ursa Prime, stood at the podium addressing the new students. His voice carried easily through the universal translators embedded in each student's communication device. For 237 years, this academy has stood as a beacon of knowledge and cooperation among the species of our galaxy, he rumbled. Here, you will not only learn advanced sciences and technologies, but you will also learn to work alongside beings whose very biology and thought processes differ radically from your own. The human students sat together in their designated section, looking appropriately impressed. All except for the dark-haired young woman, who seemed to be paying more attention to the security arrangements of the hall than to the dean's speech. Kethvar made a mental note to review her file more carefully. The challenges you will face here are designed not just to test your intellectual capabilities, but your ability to think beyond the limitations of your species' perspective, Dean Vorgash continued. Many of you come from worlds where your species is dominant, where your ways of thinking are the norm. Here, you are all minorities. Here, you must learn to see the universe through 10,000 different sets of eyes. After the ceremony, students were divided into their residential quarters. The Academy's housing was designed to promote interspecies cooperation, with mixed dormitories that housed students from different worlds. Each suite contained environmental controls that could accommodate various atmospheric needs, though students were encouraged to spend time in common areas adapted for general galactic standard atmosphere. The young human woman, her file identified her as Sarah Martinez, age 19, from Earth's North American Federation, was assigned to Suite 47C along with 3 other students: Zixtel, a reptilian saurian with natural armor plating; Fenera, a graceful windswept with hollow bones and natural flight capability; and Gorth, a stocky, rock-like being from the Silicon Collectives. "Greetings, fellow students," Zixtel said as they gathered in their common area. His translator rendered his hissing speech into standard galactic. "I am honored to share living space with representatives of such diverse evolutionary paths." Fenera's response came as a series of melodious tones that the translator converted to words. "This arrangement pleases the harmony seekers of my people. We believe diversity strengthens the collective wisdom." Gorth's communication came through vibrations in the floor that the translator picked up. Silicon Birth Gorth acknowledges carbon-based roommates. Will attempt to minimize seismic disruptions during rest periods. Sarah simply said, "Nice to meet you all. I'm looking forward to learning from you." What she didn't mention was that during the 30 seconds it had taken for introductions, she had already identified 17 different ways the common room could be used defensively, catalogued the physical capabilities and potential weaknesses of each of her roommates, and located every exit, camera, and environmental control in the space. These observations were automatic, unconscious, the result of training so intensive it had become instinct. The first week of classes introduced students to the Academy's philosophy of integrated learning. Rather than studying subjects in isolation, students worked on complex, multidisciplinary projects that required cooperation between different species and their unique capabilities. Professor Halyax, a floating jellyfish-like being whose thoughts were transmitted through bioluminescent patterns, assigned the first major project, designing a sustainable colony for a newly discovered world with unusual environmental challenges. "The planet you will be working with is designated Kepler 442c, Professor Halyax announced, her light patterns shifting in complex waves that the translators converted to speech. It has a 37-hour day cycle, gravity 1.3 times galactic standard, and 3 different atmospheric zones that shift seasonally. Your task is to design a colony that can not only survive these conditions but thrive economically and socially." Students were divided into mixed species teams of 8. Sarah found herself grouped with her 3 roommates plus 4 others: Vexandra, a spider-like arachnoid engineer; Tilwen, an energy-based photonic; Kesk, a hivemind representative from the collective consciousness; and Darion, a proud warrior from the apex predator clans. The diversity of the group was immediately apparent as they began their first planning session. Zixtel approached the problem from a biological adaptation standpoint, suggesting genetic modifications to help colonists survive the harsh conditions. Fanara focused on social harmony and psychological well-being of the colonists. Gorth considered the geological stability and mineral resources of different settlement locations. Vexandra wanted to build everything underground for maximum protection. Tilwyn suggested energy-based solutions that could adapt fluidly to changing conditions. Kesk advocated for a collective decision-making system that could process information from thousands of colonists simultaneously. Darion insisted that any successful colony would need strong defensive capabilities and a clear hierarchy of command. Perhaps, Sarah said quietly during a particularly heated exchange between Darion and Fanara about leadership structures, we should step back and consider what we're really trying to accomplish here. The group turned to her. Despite being from one of the less technologically advanced species in the galaxy, Sarah had quickly gained their respect through her practical suggestions and ability to find compromise solutions to their conflicts. The planet has 3 atmospheric zones that shift seasonally, she continued, manipulating the holographic display to show Kepler 442c rotating slowly above the table. Instead of fighting these changes, what if we designed a mobile colony? Something that could move between zones as conditions changed, taking advantage of the best each area has to offer? Vexandra's multiple eyes lit up with interest. A nomadic settlement pattern. The arachnoids have used similar strategies on worlds with extreme seasonal variations. But, how would such a colony maintain infrastructure? Gorth asked, his rocky features shifting into what passed for puzzlement among his people. Transportation systems, power grids, communication networks, these require stable foundations. Sarah was already working with the holographic interface, her hands moving with surprising dexterity for a species that many considered technologically primitive. What if we think of the colony not as a fixed city, but as a fleet of interconnected mobile platforms? Each platform could specialize in different functions: agriculture, manufacturing, research, residential, and they could reconfigure based on seasonal needs and opportunities. Kesk's hivemind representative buzzed with excitement. The sound translated as, the collective calculates significant efficiency improvements with this approach. Resource allocation could be optimized in real time based on environmental conditions and colony needs. As they worked on refining the concept, Sarah found herself naturally taking on a coordination role. She seemed to have an intuitive understanding of how each species' strengths could be applied to different aspects of the project. More importantly, she was able to translate between different cultural approaches to problem solving in a way that kept the group focused and productive. What her teammates didn't know was that Sarah's ability to coordinate diverse groups and think tactically about complex challenges came from a background that had nothing to do with traditional education. While her academic records showed excellent grades in physics, biology, and mathematics, they didn't mention the other aspects of her training, the kind that took place in facilities that didn't officially exist, preparing for scenarios that were never discussed in polite galactic society. 3 days into the project, their team had developed the most innovative colony design in the class. Professor Halyex's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what her species expressed as approval as she reviewed their proposal. Fascinating approach, she said, her light speech translated into standard galactic. Most teams focused on adapting colonists to the environment or creating static structures to resist environmental challenges. Your team has created a dynamic system that works with the planetary conditions rather than against them. This shows genuine xenological thinking, the ability to step outside your species' typical problem-solving patterns. After class, as the team was celebrating their success, Darion approached Sarah privately. The apex predator was nearly 3 meters tall, with natural armor plating and retractable claws that marked his species as one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Human Sarah, he said, using the formal address his culture required when speaking to non-pack members, your tactical thinking impresses this warrior. Your species may lack physical prowess, but your strategic capabilities show promise. Sarah smiled politely, but something in her eyes made Darion take a step back. For just a moment, he had the unsettling feeling that he was not looking at prey, but at another predator, one that might be more dangerous than anything his world had produced. Thank you, Darion. I appreciate the respect from someone of your reputation. As the weeks continued, Sarah's academic performance remained consistently excellent, but it was her leadership qualities that really set her apart. She had a gift for bringing together diverse groups and finding solutions that worked for everyone involved. Her professors began to take notice, and several commented to Director Yilmaz about the exceptional human student who seemed to understand interspecies cooperation better than some beings who had been studying it for decades. What none of them realized was that Sarah's understanding of different species came not from academic study, but from detailed intelligence briefings. Her ability to find weaknesses and exploit them for collaborative solutions was the result of training in psychological warfare and manipulation tactics. And her calm demeanor in stressful situations reflected not natural temperament, but the conditioning of someone who had been prepared for missions where discovery would mean the death of not just herself, but potentially entire worlds. The galaxy's most prestigious academy had unknowingly admitted Earth's most carefully crafted secret weapon, and Sarah Martinez was exactly where she had been trained to be: invisible, trusted, and positioned to learn everything she could about the galaxy's most advanced civilizations and their capabilities. But, as she spent more time with her fellow students, something unexpected was happening. The relationships she had been taught to see as strategic assets were beginning to feel genuinely important to her. The mission she had trained for her entire life was starting to conflict with connections she had never expected to value. And, in the depths of space, other forces were beginning to move, forces that would soon test not just Sarah's training, but her loyalty to the world that had made her what she was. The emergency alarm that woke the academy wasn't the gentle chime used for routine drills. This was the harsh, discordant sound that meant genuine danger, a sound that most students had never heard outside of safety training videos. Sarah was awake and alert before the second note finished, her training kicking in automatically as she assessed the situation. Through the transparent steel window of their dormitory suite, she could see several ships approaching the academy. They moved in formation, with the aggressive precision of military vessels. Sarah's enhanced vision, a result of genetic modifications that weren't mentioned in her official medical records, allowed her to identify the ship's configuration even at this distance. Korthak raiders, flying vessels that belonged to one of the galaxy's most notorious pirate organizations. "What's happening?" Fenara asked, her musical voice tight with fear as she emerged from her rest chamber. The windsweep's hollow bones were trembling, causing a soft rattling sound. "Looks like raiders," Sarah said calmly, already moving toward the emergency supply cabinet. "We need to get to the designated safe areas." Gortha's heavy footsteps shook the floor as he joined them. Silicon Birth has studied Korthak tactics in military history classes. They typically target isolated installations for resource acquisition and captive taking. Zixtel slithered out of his thermal rest unit, his armored scales gleaming in the emergency lighting. "The Academy's defensive systems should be activating. This station has never been successfully raided." Sarah was already accessing the emergency protocols on her personal communicator, but she was also doing something else, accessing systems that her fellow students didn't know she could reach. Hidden subroutines in her device, installed by Earth's intelligence services, gave her access to the Academy's security networks and defensive systems. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Korthak ships weren't just conducting a routine raid. They were moving with the precision of a force that knew exactly where the Academy's defensive systems were located and how to disable them. As she watched, targeted electromagnetic pulse weapons knocked out 3 of the station's primary defensive arrays before they could even charge their weapons. "This isn't a random attack," Sarah said, her voice carrying an authority that made her roommates look at her with surprise. "They have inside information about the Academy's defenses." Through the Academy's corridors, emergency lights cast everything in red shadows as students and faculty moved toward designated shelter areas. Professor Yilmaz's voice echoed through the communication system, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "All students and non-essential personnel are to proceed immediately to safe areas Alpha through Delta. Faculty and staff are to implement Emergency Protocol 7. This is not a drill." Sarah found herself moving with her roommates toward Safe Area Gamma, but her mind was racing through tactical assessments. The Korthak raiders were known for their brutality, but they were also practical. They wouldn't risk attacking the galaxy's most prestigious educational institution unless they were after something specific, something valuable enough to justify the massive retaliation that would inevitably follow. As they reached the safe area, a reinforced section of the Academy designed to withstand direct military assault, Sarah noticed something that her fellow students missed. Several faculty members were missing from the groups, including some of the Academy's most senior researchers. Dr. Chen, her human supervisor, was nowhere to be seen.
"Stay here," Sarah told her roommates. "I need to check on something."
Human Sarah, the protocols require all students to remain in designated safe areas during emergency situations, Zixtel said, his reptilian features showing concern. Leaving could result in harm to yourself and compromise rescue operations.
But Sarah was already moving, slipping out of the safe area with the fluid motion of someone trained in stealth operations.
The corridors were dimly lit and mostly empty, but she could hear the sounds of combat echoing from other sections of the station. The Academy's security forces were engaging the raiders, but, from the intensity of the weapons fire, it was clear the defenders were outnumbered. Using her unauthorized access to the Academy's systems, Sarah made her way toward the research levels. If the court hacks were after something specific, it would likely be in the advanced laboratories where the galaxy's most cutting-edge research was conducted. As she moved through the corridors, her training allowed her to avoid the security sensors and emergency response teams that were rushing toward the combat zones.
The research level was strangely quiet when she reached it. Too quiet.
Her enhanced hearing picked up the soft hum of active equipment, but none of the usual sounds of researchers working. As she approached Dr. Chen's laboratory, she found the door standing open. Inside, 3 figures were working frantically at the main research terminal. 2 were Korthak raiders, their distinctive insectoid features hidden behind combat masks. The third was Dr. Chen herself. "The quantum resonance data is in subsection 47, Dr. Chen was saying, her voice calm and professional.
"The gravitational wave manipulation research is stored separately on the isolated network." Sarah felt a cold shock of realization. Dr. Chen wasn't a victim of the raid, she was collaborating with the raiders.
The woman who had supervised Earth's first delegation to the galaxy's premier academy was stealing research that could revolutionize space travel and potentially give any species that possessed it a massive military advantage.
"Human supervisor," one of the court hacks said in their clicking language, "the extraction time approaches maximum safe duration. Defense forces are adapting to our tactics more efficiently than projected." Dr.
Chen looked up from the terminal, and, for a moment, her eyes met Sarah's through the partially open door. The older woman's expression shifted from concentration to shock, then, to something that looked almost like regret. "Sarah," Dr. Chen said quietly.
"You shouldn't be here."
Sarah stepped into the laboratory, her posture relaxed but ready.
"Neither should you, Dr. Chen.
This isn't part of any Earth mission profile I was briefed on."
Dr. Chen's expression hardened. "You don't understand the larger picture, Sarah. Humanity needs this technology if we're going to survive in this galaxy.
The other species see us as primitive, aggressive newcomers.
They'll never share their advanced research willingly." "So you decided to steal it?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious about the reasoning behind the betrayal.
"This will destroy any chance of peaceful cooperation between humanity and the galactic community." "The galactic community was never going to accept us as equals," Dr. Chen replied, her fingers still working at the terminal.
"We're too young, too violent, too different.
But, with this research, we can ensure that humanity has a place at the table, by force, if necessary." The 2 Korthak raiders had been watching this exchange with growing impatience. One of them stepped forward, raising a weapon that Sarah recognized as a neural disruptor designed to incapacitate without killing, perfect for taking prisoners.
"Human student will be valuable for information extraction," the raider said.
"Earth military training methods are of significant interest to Korthak intelligence services." Sarah smiled, and something in that expression made even the battle-hardened Korthak raider hesitate.
"I think you might be disappointed by what you learned from me."
What happened next took less than 10 seconds, but it completely redefined everything that anyone in that room thought they knew about human capabilities. Sarah moved like liquid lightning, her body flowing around the neural disruptor's beam as if she had known exactly when and where it would be fired. Her hand struck the first raider's weapon arm at a precise point that caused his entire exoskeleton to lock up, the neural feedback from the impact overloading his nervous system. Before he hit the ground, she was already redirecting the second raider's attack, using his momentum against him to slam him into the laboratory wall with enough force to crack his combat armor. Dr. Chen had time to raise her own weapon, a small pistol that she had apparently been carrying throughout her time at the academy, but Sarah was already inside her guard. A single precise strike to Dr. Chen's wrist caused her to drop the weapon, while a follow-up movement left her unconscious on the laboratory floor. The entire encounter had been conducted in almost complete silence, with movements so efficient and precise that they seemed almost choreographed. But, as Sarah stood among the three unconscious figures, she realized she had a much larger problem than she had anticipated. "Impressive display," a new voice said from the laboratory entrance. Though perhaps not entirely unexpected. Sarah turned to see Ambassador Kethvar standing in the doorway, flanked by two Academy security officers. His expression was calm, but his eyes were studying her with the intensity of someone reassessing everything he thought he knew. "Ambassador," Sarah said carefully. "Dr. Chen and these raiders were stealing research data." "I was attempting to prevent you were attempting to complete your mission," Kethvar interrupted. "The question is, which mission? The one Dr. Chen was pursuing, or another one entirely?" Sarah felt her carefully constructed cover story crumbling around her. "I don't understand what you're suggesting." Kethvar stepped into the laboratory, his movements careful and deliberate. "Sarah Martinez, age 19, from Earth's North American Federation. Excellent academic scores, impressive leadership capabilities, and a remarkable ability to adapt to interspecies cooperation. Also, according to our more detailed scans, carrying genetic modifications that enhance physical capabilities, reflexes, and sensory perception to levels far beyond baseline human norms." Sarah's mind raced through possible responses, but she could see that denial was no longer an option. Kethvar had been investigating her background more thoroughly than she had realized. "The Academy has been aware of your true nature for several weeks," Kethvar continued. "What we weren't certain about was your specific mission parameters. Were you here to steal research like Dr. Chen? To gather intelligence on galactic military capabilities? To assess potential weaknesses in our educational and social systems?" "I was here to learn," Sarah said, and realized that it was actually true. "My mission was to attend the Academy, excel academically, and report back on what I observed about galactic civilization and technology levels." "A relatively benign intelligence-gathering operation," Kethvar mused. "Certainly nothing that would justify the level of enhancement and training you've obviously received." "No, I think there's more to your story than simple reconnaissance." The sound of weapons fire was growing closer as the Academy's defense forces continued their battle with the Korthak raiders. Sarah could hear tactical communications echoing through the corridors, coordinating defensive positions and evacuation procedures. "Ambassador, shouldn't we be focusing on the immediate threat?" Sarah asked. "The raiders are still active throughout the Academy." "Indeed they are. Which brings me to an interesting proposition." Kethvar gestured toward the laboratory's main terminal, where Dr. Chen had been accessing the Academy's research databases. "The Korthaks came here with specific intelligence about our defensive systems and research storage locations. Intelligence that could only have come from someone with high-level access to Academy systems." Sarah looked at the unconscious form of Dr. Chen, understanding beginning to dawn on her. "You knew she was working with them." "We suspected." Dr. Chen's background included several gaps that our security services found interesting. Her selection as supervisor for Earth's first Academy delegation was curious, given that there were several more qualified candidates available. Kethvar moved to the terminal and began accessing the security logs, his six-fingered hands moving rapidly across the holographic interface. "What we didn't anticipate was that Earth might have sent multiple operatives with different mission parameters." "You think this was planned?" Sarah asked. "That Dr. Chen's operation and my presence here were coordinated?" "Were they?" Kethvar asked, turning to study her with those large, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Sarah considered her response carefully. The truth was complex. Her handlers on Earth had given her standing orders to prevent any action that might compromise humanity's relationship with the galactic community. Dr. Chen's theft of advanced research certainly qualified as such an action. "No," she said finally. "My mission was to integrate successfully into the Academy environment and report on galactic technology levels and social structures. Preventing theft of research that could damage human-galactic relations falls under my standing orders to avoid compromise of the mission.
Fascinating, Kefvar said.
So Earth sent both a crude theft operation and a sophisticated long-term intelligence asset, without coordinating between them. Your species' approach to espionage is remarkably chaotic. The weapons fire was getting much closer now, and Sarah could hear Korthak tactical communications in the corridor outside. The raiders were advancing toward the research levels, probably following the same intelligence that had led Dr. Chen to this laboratory.
Ambassador, we need to move, Sarah said. The court hacks will be here soon, and this laboratory contains research that they're specifically targeting. Kefvar was still studying the security logs on the terminal.
According to this, Dr. Chen accessed data on quantum tunneling research, gravitational wave manipulation, and something called the Void Gate Project. Any one of these would represent a significant leap forward for a species with humanity's current technology level.
What's the Void Gate Project? Sarah asked, genuinely curious.
Theoretical research into creating stable wormholes for instantaneous travel across galactic distances. Still decades away from practical application, but the theoretical framework alone would be invaluable to any species looking to expand their technological capabilities rapidly. Sarah heard the distinctive sound of Korthak combat boots in the corridor, a rhythmic clicking that indicated at least 6 raiders moving in formation.
We really need to go. Now.
But, instead of moving toward the exit, Kefvar did something unexpected. He activated a security protocol that sealed the laboratory and began a data purge of the research files that Dr. Chen had been accessing.
What are you doing? Sarah asked.
Ensuring that neither the court hacks nor Dr. Chen's Earth handlers obtain research that could destabilize the galactic balance of power, Kefvar replied.
Some knowledge is too dangerous to be stolen.
The laboratory door shuddered as something heavy struck it from outside. The court hacks had arrived and were attempting to breach the sealed entrance. The door would hold for perhaps 2 minutes before their cutting tools broke through. Sarah looked around the laboratory, automatically cataloging defensive positions and potential weapons. The space hadn't been designed for combat, but her training had taught her to see tactical opportunities anywhere.
Ambassador, do you trust me? She asked.
Kefvar paused in his data purging operation to look at her.
That depends entirely on what you're planning to do.
I'm planning to get us out of here alive and ensure that the court hacks don't get what they came for, Sarah replied.
But I'm going to need you to follow my instructions without question for the next few minutes.
Outside the laboratory, the sounds of cutting tools had begun. Bright sparks were appearing around the edges of the door as the raiders worked to burn through the reinforced metal.
Kefvar studied Sarah's face for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. What do you need me to do?
Sarah's smile was sharp and predatory, and, for the first time since arriving at the academy, she looked exactly like what she really was, a weapon that had been carefully designed and trained for situations exactly like this one.
First, is there another way out of this laboratory besides that door? Emergency maintenance access, but it's quite small. Designed for automated repair systems, not for beings our size. Perfect. Second question, how long until the Academy's military response arrives? Kefvar consulted his communicator. Admiral Fexian's battle group was conducting exercises 2 light hours away. Estimated arrival time is 43 minutes. Sarah looked at the sparking door, then, at the research terminal where critical galactic secrets were slowly being deleted.
43 minutes was far longer than they had, but it might be exactly the amount of time she needed to accomplish something that would change everything about humanity's relationship with the galaxy.
Ambassador, she said, I think it's time you learned what humans are really capable of.
The maintenance access tunnel was barely large enough for Sarah to crawl through, but her enhanced flexibility and compact frame allowed her to move with surprising speed through the cramped space. Behind her, she could hear Ambassador Kefvar struggling with the tight confines, though he was managing to keep up despite his larger size. This passage connects to the primary power distribution center, Kefvar whispered as they crawled through the darkness. From there, we can access the Academy's central command systems. Sarah paused at an intersection in the tunnel system, listening to sounds from the Academy beyond the metal walls. The Korthak raiders had broken into the laboratory and were undoubtedly discovering that the research data they had come to steal was already being systematically destroyed. She could hear shouted commands and the sound of equipment being smashed in frustration.
"Ambassador, I need to ask you something important," Sarah said quietly. "How much do you really know about my background?"
Kethvar's breathing was labored from the confined space, but his voice remained steady.
"We know that you are not merely a gifted student from Earth.
Your physical capabilities, reflexes, and tactical awareness suggest military training of an extremely high level. Your genetic modifications were carefully designed to enhance human capabilities while remaining undetectable to standard medical scans."
Sarah resumed crawling through the tunnel, considering how much to reveal.
"What we didn't expect when we sent me here was to find other Earth operatives already in place. Dr. Chen's mission was separate from mine, probably planned by a different department entirely."
"And what was your mission, specifically?"
"To learn everything I could about galactic civilization, technology, and military capabilities. To integrate so successfully that no one would suspect my true purpose. And to be prepared for contingencies."
"What kind of contingencies?" Kethvar asked, though something in his tone suggested he already suspected the answer.
Sarah reached the end of the tunnel and began working on the access panel that led to the power distribution center. The kind that might require a single operative to disable or destroy high-value targets if diplomatic relations deteriorated beyond repair. There was a long silence behind her as Kethvar processed this information. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful rather than alarmed.
"So you were sent as both a spy and a saboteur?"
"A failsafe, in case humanity decided that cooperation with the galactic community was impossible."
"Something like that," Sarah agreed, successfully opening the access panel.
She emerged into a vast chamber filled with humming power conduits and energy distribution systems. The Academy's power plant was a marvel of engineering, drawing energy from 3 different stellar sources and distributing it throughout the massive station with perfect efficiency. Kethvar emerged from the tunnel behind her, his ceremonial robes torn and his breathing heavy.
"And are you now planning to complete that sabotage mission?"
Sarah was already moving through the power center, but her destination wasn't the primary systems.
Instead, she was heading toward a smaller console that controlled the Academy's internal communication networks.
"No," she said, beginning to work at the communications terminal.
"I'm planning to prevent a war."
The console came alive under her hands as she accessed systems that her Earth handlers had given her backdoor access to. But, instead of using those systems to gather intelligence or cause damage, she was doing something entirely different.
"What are you doing?"
Kethvar asked, moving to look over her shoulder at the holographic displays. "Sending a message to the Korthak raiders," Sarah replied. "Through channels they think are secure." The message she composed was brief and direct: "Academy defensive systems will be restored to full power in 6 minutes.
Extraction recommended immediately.
Alternative target data available at coordinates 47.3.118. Kethvar read the message and looked at her with confusion.
"You're warning them to escape? And offering them alternative targets?"
"I'm giving them a way out that doesn't involve taking hostages or destroying the Academy," Sarah explained as she sent the message through Korthak military channels. "The coordinates I gave them lead to an abandoned research station that was decommissioned 15 years ago. It will take their ships at least 2 days to reach it, by which time Admiral Fexian's battle group will have arrived here and can pursue them."
"And if they ignore your warning and continue their attack on the Academy?" Sarah's expression became grimly professional. "Then, I implement the contingency plan I was trained for."
But not the one my Earth handlers expected. The power center around them suddenly thrummed with increased energy as automated systems began bringing the Academy's defensive arrays back online. Sarah had also sent commands to the Academy's engineering systems, instructing them to prioritize defensive restoration over the data purge that Kethvar had initiated. "You're restoring our defenses," Kethvar observed. "Even though that might compromise your ability to gather the intelligence you were sent here for."
"Ambassador, I've been here for months now.
I've learned more about galactic civilization than my handlers ever expected, and most of it has nothing to do with technology or military capabilities." Sarah finished her work at the communications terminal and turned to face Kethvar directly. I've learned that the galaxy is a complicated place, but it's not the hostile environment that Earth's military planners feared. Most species are genuinely interested in cooperation and mutual benefit.
The threats that exist, like the court hacks, are problems that affect everyone, not specific threats to humanity. And, Dr. Chen? What about her mission to steal advanced research?
Dr. Chen was operating under the assumption that humanity needed stolen technology to compete with more advanced species.
But, the Academy doesn't work that way.
Knowledge here is shared freely among students and researchers. If humanity had approached the galactic community honestly, most of this research would have been available through legitimate academic collaboration. Kethvar was studying Sarah with an expression that mixed respect with careful evaluation.
You sound as though you've reached some significant conclusions about humanity's place in the galaxy.
I have, Sarah said simply. But I'm not sure my handlers back on Earth are ready to hear them. The sound of Korthak ships departing reached them through the Academy's hull, a series of vibrations that indicated the raiders were taking Sarah's advice and withdrawing before the defensive systems came back online. Through the power center's monitoring systems, they could see the raider ships moving away from the Academy at maximum speed. Your warning worked, Kethvar observed.
They're retreating.
Good. That means no one else has to die today, and the Academy can continue its mission.
But there will still be consequences, Kethvar pointed out. Dr. Chen's attempted theft, your revealed identity, Earth's apparent willingness to use espionage against its galactic neighbors, these issues cannot simply be ignored.
Sarah nodded, having already considered these complications.
I know.
But maybe there's a way to address them that doesn't end with humanity being expelled from the galactic community. What do you propose?
Complete honesty, Sarah said. About my mission, about Dr. Chen's operation, about Earth's fears and misconceptions regarding galactic civilization.
Followed by a genuine commitment to cooperation and integration.
Kethvar was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. That would require Earth to admit to conducting espionage operations against its allies.
It would mean acknowledging that humanity has been operating from fear and suspicion rather than good faith.
Yes, Sarah agreed.
But it would also demonstrate that humanity is capable of learning and changing. That we're not the aggressive, untrustworthy species that some members of the galactic community believe us to be.
And you would be willing to serve as a witness to this change? To testify about your true mission and Earth's actual intentions?
Sarah considered the question carefully.
Revealing her true identity and mission would certainly end her career as an intelligence operative.
It might also result in serious legal consequences when she returned to Earth, since her handlers had never authorized her to reveal classified operations to foreign governments. But, as she thought about her roommates Zixtel, Fenera, and Gorth, and the other students she had come to genuinely care about, she realized that her priorities had shifted dramatically since arriving at the Academy.
Yes, she said finally.
I think it's time for humanity to stop operating from fear and start building genuine relationships with our galactic neighbors. Kethvar's expression shifted to what Sarah had learned to recognize as approval among his species.
Very well.
But, first, we need to address the immediate situation. The Academy's administration will need a full briefing on what has occurred here, and there will undoubtedly be an investigation into how the court hacks obtained intelligence about our defensive systems. As they made their way back through the Academy's corridors toward the administrative levels, Sarah felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, she was no longer hiding her true capabilities or maintaining a carefully constructed cover identity. The freedom of honesty was unexpectedly liberating. They found Director Yilmoth in the Emergency Command Center, coordinating the Academy's response to the raid and preparing for the arrival of Admiral Fexian's battle group. Her compound eyes tracked to Sarah immediately, and her expression suggested that she had been expecting this conversation.
Student Martinez, Director Yilmoth said, her clicking speech translated smoothly into Standard Galactic. Ambassador Kethvar has informed me that you played a significant role in resolving today's crisis.
He has also suggested that there are aspects of your background that require discussion.
Yes, Director, Sarah replied. There are some things I need to tell you about why I'm really here.
Over the next hour, Sarah provided a complete briefing on her true identity, training, and mission parameters. She explained Earth's fears about joining a galactic community dominated by more advanced species, the paranoia that had led to multiple espionage operations being launched simultaneously, and her own gradual realization that those fears were largely unfounded. Director Yilmoth listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions but otherwise allowing Sarah to provide a complete account. When she finished, there was a long silence in the command center.
"This is quite disturbing," Director Yilmoth said finally.
"Not because of your personal actions, which appear to have been largely benevolent, but because of what it reveals about Earth's approach to galactic relations."
"I know," Sarah said.
"And I take full responsibility for my part in it. But I also want to help find a way to address Earth's misconceptions and build a genuine partnership between humanity and the galactic community."
"That may be possible," Director Yilmoth replied. "But it will require more than just your testimony. Earth's government will need to formally acknowledge these operations and demonstrate a commitment to more transparent cooperation." Ambassador Kethvar stepped forward. "Director, I believe there may be an opportunity here. The Galactic Council has been discussing concerns about humanity's integration into galactic civilization. Student Martinez's testimony could provide valuable insights into human motivations and fears." "You're suggesting that I address the Galactic Council?" Sarah asked, feeling a moment of uncertainty. Speaking to the Academy's administration was one thing, but addressing the governing body of galactic civilization was something entirely different. "I'm suggesting that humanity needs a spokesperson who understands both Earth's concerns and galactic realities," Kethvar replied. "Someone who can bridge the gap between human fears and galactic opportunities." Sarah thought about this proposal as emergency response teams continued their work around them. Outside the Academy's windows, she could see the lights of approaching ships Admiral Thexian's battle group arriving to secure the area and investigate the Korthak raid. "What would happen to my fellow students?" she asked. "The humans who came here as part of the legitimate academic program? Their status would be unaffected," Director Yilmoth assured her. "Your actions today, including your role in preventing more serious damage to the Academy, speak well of human potential for positive contribution to galactic civilization." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then, yes, I'll do it. I'll speak to the Galactic Council and help find a way for humanity to move forward as genuine partners rather than fearful competitors." 3 days later, Sarah stood before the assembled representatives of 47 different species in the Galactic Council chambers on the neutral world of Concordia. Her roommates from the Academy were in the observation gallery, along with Director Yilmoth and Ambassador Kethvar. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber's translation systems, "I stand before you not as the spy that Earth sent to your institutions, but as a human being who has learned that cooperation and understanding are always preferable to suspicion and deception." Over the next 2 hours, Sarah provided a detailed account of Earth's fears about joining galactic civilization, the misguided attempts to gain advantage through espionage and theft, and the gradual realization that the galaxy was not the hostile environment that humanity had expected. She spoke about her roommates and fellow students, about professors who had shared knowledge freely across species boundaries, and about a civilization that measured success not by military dominance but by collective advancement and mutual prosperity. When she finished, the chamber was silent for several minutes as the representatives considered her words. Finally, the eldest speaker, an ancient being whose species had been traveling between stars since before most others had developed written language, spoke for the assembly. "Human Sarah Martinez, your honesty in revealing these deceptions is noted and appreciated. Your species appears to be capable of growth and learning, which are valued traits in galactic civilization." The eldest speaker paused, consulting with other representatives through a network of subtle gestures and bioluminescent communications. "It is the judgment of this council that humanity shall continue to be welcomed in galactic institutions, with the understanding that future cooperation will be based on transparency and mutual benefit rather than suspicion and deception." Sarah felt a wave of relief that left her momentarily speechless. "Thank you, eldest speaker. I promise that humanity will prove worthy of that trust." "We shall see," the eldest speaker replied. "But, based on your example, we are optimistic about the possibilities.
6 months later, Sarah was back at the Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences, but her role had changed significantly. She was now serving as a liaison between Earth's government and the Academy's administration, helping to design programs that would better integrate human students into galactic academic culture.
Her roommates had welcomed her back with enthusiasm, though their relationship had evolved as well.
Knowing her true background hadn't damaged their friendships, if anything, it had deepened their respect for her honesty and her commitment to building genuine cooperation between species. Human Sarah, Zixtel said as they worked together on a new project, designing educational programs for newly contacted species. Your species continues to surprise and impress. The changes in Earth's approach to galactic relations have been remarkable to observe. Humans adapt quickly when they understand the real situation, Sarah replied.
The problem was that we were operating from fear rather than knowledge.
Phanera's musical communication carried notes of harmony and satisfaction.
The Academy's new transparency protocols have improved trust relationships with many species.
Your suggestions for open exchange of cultural and technological information have been particularly valuable.
Gortha's rumbling voice came through the floor vibrations. Silicon Birth observes significant improvements in interspecies cooperation since implementation of human honesty protocols.
Other species have begun sharing previously classified research more freely. Sarah smiled as she watched her friends working together on their shared project. The galaxy was a complicated place, full of diverse species with different needs, fears, and aspirations. But it was also a place where cooperation and understanding were possible, where former enemies could become allies, and where even the darkest secrets could be transformed into foundations for trust. Earth's deadliest secret had become the galaxy's most effective ambassador for peace, and Sarah Martinez had discovered that the most dangerous mission she could undertake was the simple act of telling the truth and building genuine relationships across the vast spaces between the stars. The Academy continued to float in the neutral zone between star systems, its crystalline spires catching the light of distant suns. But now those same corridors that had once hidden Earth's most carefully crafted weapon were filled with the sounds of true cooperation, the harmony that could only exist when different species chose to trust each other despite their differences. In the end, humanity's greatest strength had not been its ability to create super soldiers or conduct espionage operations. It had been its capacity for change, for growth, and for choosing cooperation over competition when presented with the real possibilities that the galaxy had to offer.
Sarah had been trained to be Earth's deadliest secret.
Instead, she had become something far more valuable, a bridge between worlds, and proof that even the most carefully planned deceptions could be transformed into foundations for genuine peace.